let me do a few tricks, some old and then some new tricks. I'm very versatile.
Greeting from Castle Goring from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, I'm going to plunge in with what Animo has to say. Lady C, I've heard on another channel that the most mail the palace receives is from the public over the children being in the line of succession. You're the person who has most comprehensively and consistently addressed the surrogacy question. So, can I ask if that's true? And if it is, can you please provide us with an analysis of what we can expect will happen? Yes, I am aware of the fact that there is pressure building up at the palace from the public. And I would encourage people to make their sentiments known by making their voices heard. The only thing, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, the only thing that is going to make any difference whatsoever to this situation, to encourage a meaningful outcome where the existent doubts will either be cleared up or the situation will be dispensed with in such a way that the doubts do not need to be cleared up, but the consequences of the conduct that caused the doubts to arise will be, let's put it that way, is if you keep all the pressure and make your voices heard. So if you haven't and you feel you would like to, please feel free to write to the king or just write to the palace and let them know. That is how things achieve results in this country and with this monarchy. The whole business of removing anybody from the line of succession who is already in it is very legalistic, unless, of course, they remove themselves from the line of succession. It's called renunciation. But otherwise, it is extremely difficult. This monarchy is a monarchy that was created with the Act of Settlement as a result of the Glorious Revolution of 1688. The crown was settled on the Electress Sophia, who was a granddaughter of Charles the First. I think that's right. Or was it James the First? Yeah, Charles the First. No, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think she was a granddaughter of Charles the First. And she and her descendants were given the right to the British throne, trumping people who had a better claim to it, such as the Duke in Bavaria, who is the rightful King of England if you go straight off descent. And notice I said King of England, not the British King, King of England. Because, of course, England and Scotland were not always a joint crown. Let me see how else I can answer it. In my book, Meghan and Harry the Real Story, Persecutors or Victims, I make the point that Meghan's behavior invited these questions, and that hasn't changed, and it's not going to change. But how likely is it that the palace is going to react at this point? So much else is going on in the world. And remember, I'm saying this in the light of the fact that the biggest issue confronting the crown at the moment, where the public is concerned, is the surrogacy issue and the question of those children's rights to be included in the line of succession as a result of both their parents' conduct. Meghan's preposterous performances while she was pregnant, flaunting her baby bump around as if it was a balloon filled with helium. And Harry, his claims, they don't make sense. What he said in his book about the birth of that child, they don't make sense. However, so much else is going on that pressure, but there are many ways. Let me put it this way. I need to be really careful how I put this. There are many ways to skin a cat. And I have cats, so it's just a figure of speech to those of you who love cats. It's a figure of speech, and it's not about our kitties. It's just a figure of speech. And the likelihood is that what will most likely result in some sort of amendment that will possibly, and it would have to be an amendment to the Act of Succession, unless, of course, Harry could be induced to renounce his rights of succession to the throne, possibly for himself and his children. They're minors, and until they achieve their majority, their father can speak for them. That's a legal fact. Otherwise, it's very awkward. I mean, there are all sorts of Yugoslav, Russian, Romanian, Danish, Greek, etc., German, endless German princes and princesses who they are included in the line of succession to the throne. They may be 200th from the throne, 1,000th, but they're still in the line of succession. There is a feeling that it's often best not to tamper with things like the rights of succession to a throne. Just let sleeping dogs lie, because once you start, it might cause problems. But with a sympathetic and a legally aware Prime Minister and an amenable Parliament, a bill could be passed that would be relatively simple, but that could be potentially a real political hot potato. What becomes more likely is if Meghan continues to march the children the way she has started to, then that could be something that could be used. But again, it can have a knock-on effect upon those lower down the line of succession. But there could be specific exclusions. I mean, the whole situation is far more complex and far more nuanced than people seem to understand. So there's also another issue. I know that there is talk behind the scenes, and that there's building pressure, and that's why I wouldn't discourage you from writing in if you want to, because quite frankly, if you have a voice and you want to be heard, be heard. But it's also in different areas and different quarters. Really, I think the genie is out of the bottle. It's just a matter of time before somebody manages to nail it down. I mean, at the moment, for instance, somebody brought this to my attention. Shauna of the Vintage Read Show, I mean, she's great. She is a wonderful book reviewer. She's a fine interviewer. She's very entertaining. She has a wonderful channel, and she has interviewed me. And she was actually very nice about my book. Well, she is at the moment doing a series on this matter, and I looked at what she did. It's called Why Didn't They Call the Obstetrician? And she's making the point, and it's really in terms of Meghan's claims of ideation. Let's leave it at that, which of course I roundly debunked in Meghan and Harry, the Real Story, Persecutors or Victims. And she makes the point, why didn't Harry and Meghan call the obstetrician? Every woman, when she is pregnant, has an obstetrician. It's the first port of call. Now, there was an obstetrician named in a book by one of Meghan's propagandists, who at the time was married to someone I've known for about 50 years, and I'm not going to mention any names. And when I was writing the updated version of Meghan and Harry, the Real Story, Persecutors or Victims, I wanted his input, but I wanted to do it in such a way that I was going to not prevail upon the fact that his sister and I had been great friends and that I've known him for many, many years. I don't like putting people in awkward positions. But I had heard that he was quite vociferous about the fact that he and his wife were not in England at the time of the birth of the child. So if you want to know how I handled it, you can read my book, because I actually phoned up his stately home, and he wasn't there, but his secretary was there, and I left a particular message in such a way that I would spare him the awkwardness of being put on the spot, while his response or lack of response would give me the information that I needed to corroborate whether it was true that he had said that he and the wife weren't in England at the time of the birth. And sure enough, I got the corroboration. Why didn't they call the obstetrician? Why did Meghan go into the palace? Well, I explain in the book why she went into the palace. She went into the palace to lay a paper trail of blame so that she would be able to shift Harry and herself to California, and where she was hoping to fulfill her dreams of stardom. That's why she went into the palace. Why didn't she call the obstetrician? She didn't need to call the obstetrician, because the story, as they have recounted it, was cock and bull, to be blunt. And indeed, who was her obstetrician? And did she have an obstetrician? Because no medical person signed off on the palace announcement. Let's leave it at that. Denise Humphreys says, let's face it, they left and continue to disgrace the royal family so realistically they should ask to be officially removed from the line of succession and give up their titles as well. Pigs will fly before, my dear. Plus, the girl was born in the USA and is not a British citizen. That's not true. She's a British citizen. Also, I believe the palace know and have tried to keep it under wraps. Well, when you are the victim of a sleight of hand, and the consequences are potentially devastating, are you not going to tread carefully? This could be devastating for the monarchy, absolutely. It already is, but they're burying heads in the sand. But what else are they going to do? But I tell you something. The word is that Charles does not want to do anything. And remember, he's very ill. He's fighting for his survival. He's also kinging it at the same time, as the Duke of Windsor would have put it. And he's choosing his battlegrounds carefully. And I understand that. Sorry. Also, a father's role is quite different from a brother's role. But I understand that William has a totally different take on the situation from his father. And any deferral is only necessarily temporary. It's not necessarily permanent. And William will do what he needs to do when he needs to do it. However, my understanding is that it's the marching of the children that will be used as the hook upon which to hang that load of dirty laundry. So, poor Megsy baby, she can't win any way she turns. Megsy, you shouldn't have been playing these games. All you needed to be was a regular, decent royal duchess. That's all you needed to be. You didn't need to be so clever. You didn't need to be so manipulative. You didn't need to be so devious. Let's leave it at that. Susan says, I've been away for the weekend and I'm catching up. I read in Sunday's paper that Netflix are considering renewing the contract, but they want Harry. They want his story of Diana's death for a documentary in 2027 to commemorate the 30th anniversary of her death. I can imagine his story. I was a sulky child and refused to take her phone call. He's not going to admit he was a sulky child, but he was. She died that night, and I've been blaming any and everybody for it ever since. It's the whole reason for my life going wrong. That's about right. But first of all, Diana's death is 2 years away. A lot can happen in 2 years, let me tell you. That's one thing. The second thing is, yes, my understanding is that Netflix would like to have Harry basically as a presenter of a program to commemorate his mother's death. Harry doesn't, by his own admission, remembers very little of his mother, and I can tell you something, going off what he says about her, he knows even less than he remembers. He doesn't know Diana as she was. He knows Diana as he would have liked her to be. That's not true of William. William knew her as she was. Now, okay, William was 2 years and 3 months older than Harry, or is it 2 years and 2 months? I think 2 years and 2 months older. But 3 months. But those 2 years and 3 months made a huge difference because Harry was 13 when his mother died. He was 2 weeks short of his 13th birthday. And until you are 14, there was a very good study done on failure to grieve and melancholia by someone at the Maudsley Hospital in the 80s about children who lose a parent before the age of 14 and the knock-on lifelong effects it can have. He would simply be a talking head. He's not going to end up, and of course he can provide photographs and maybe rope in Uncle Charles and Aunt Jane and Aunt Sarah. So he can be of some use. But how popular really is Diana at this stage? She's a historical figure. She's not big news anymore. I mean, there's no way Harry presenting a program on his mother is going to be huge news. Unless he was going to tell a whole load of lies the way he did in Spare about the participants, in which case my understanding is the palace would move to shut it down. So that's not going to happen. So he's not going to make a great deal of money out of it. Meghan has nothing to do with it, despite having convinced Harry at times, only at times, that she is the reincarnation of his mother. She has nothing to do with it. So Julia Getman says, Dear Lady C, is there any validity to the rumours that Harry is doing a show for Netflix about Diana 30 years later in 2027? Generally, are there ways that Prince William can protect her legacy and image? No, he can't. Harry is Diana's son. He can pretty much do what he wants, and he has been doing what he wants. He has been exploiting her, and he has been allowing his wife to exploit her. Harry and Meghan have done more to ruin and damage Diana's reputation, which had healed up very nicely posthumously. But they keep on pulling the band-aid off the wound. And there's very little that William can do to stop that. Also, Harry has a problem because if Harry presents that show and it's shut down, it's embarrassing. So that he's not, and also Netflix now understands that the way the wind has blown, Harry and Meghan are chaff. They want to stick with the wheat. So they need to be very careful what they do. And also, Meghan is a huge problem for them as well. You know, Tom Dillon has just been roasting Meghan alive on Netflix. You have Gwyneth Paltrow, not on Netflix, but nevertheless, mocking her roundly. There's some other performer who's been mocking her as well. I don't even remember her name. I didn't know it from Adam. I still don't. And of course, you have Vanessa Feltz in the United Kingdom doing With Love Vanessa, which is a wicked takeoff on With Love Meghan. I mean, these are... Netflix has a problem on its hands, and I am aware of the fact, through what I've been told by my contacts in Hollywood, that Netflix is aware of its problem with both Meghan and Harry, because they bought what they thought was royalty that would be worth its weight in gold, instead of which they've ended up with 2 turkeys. I mean, it rarely is the case of the emperor's new clothes, but they paid for cloth of gold. And they are now aware that everybody is saying, oh, look at that. Oh, there she is. Oh, gosh. And she said she had a good figure. We can see she doesn't. Him, oh, what's that? A blue todger? Oh, oh, oh. I think you get the picture. Diane Hernandez says, I would like everyone's opinion. Do you think Harry sees the truth now? Is he actually aware of the true person he was manipulated into marrying? Not to get him off the hook, he's a disturbed guy. Every family has one. Laugh out loud. My understanding is that he does intermittently have flashes of insight, usually when he's pushed to the limit. Now, there are problems in Montecito as I'm speaking. There are huge problems financially, there are huge problems reputationally, and there are huge problems professionally. And the use of the children is shaping up to being a practical problem that could actually result in them, well, consequences. Let's leave it at that, because I don't want to limit it too much. But Is he aware of the true person he married? Evidently, at times, yes. But at other times, he has been so meow-wit, and he is also a weakling who thinks he's a strong man. And I've said it before, she winds him up, she rolls him, oh, and then he runs out of steam because he's been wound up. He doesn't have the intelligence, he doesn't have the character, and he also doesn't have the insight. He's not consistent. Now, a part of that is a residual effect of being involved with a narcissist, because they have you so confused you don't know whether you're coming and going. But another part of it is that he gets bees in his bonnet. He's irrational. He's not one who's been much given to accurate insight ever. And he was completely besotted and duped by her. And he's terrified of her, I'm told. Not always when she winds him up enough and he loses his temper, no. But otherwise, yes. And then, of course, she reels him back in. But at the moment, I understand things are really pretty dicey because of all that's going on behind the scenes in terms of them, well, the failure of her show and her relentless optimism that she's perfect, everything she does is fine, everybody else is wrong. And he evidently sees that that's rubbish. So he's in some ways more connected to reality than she is. So is he a disturbed guy? By his own admission, he's disturbed. Oh, is he aware of the true person he married? I gather intermittently. Will that be enough for him to ever walk? Harry evidently is very proud and never likes to admit he's wrong and never does admit he's wrong. And any admission he makes of fallibility is simply to prove how wonderful and special he is. So he doesn't really actually have insight. So I think let's leave it at that. Diane Marsh says, Dear Lady C, I love your show. Thank you. What is your reaction to Father Brendan's last YouTube show? I actually looked at it so that I could answer this because other people pointed it out to me as well. I thought it was spot on and with delicious humor. I'm an 85-year-old relic living in Chicago and so look forward to you and your fur babies. Thank you very much. Thank you. That means a lot. Well, I saw it. Oh, loved it actually. Father Brendan Kilcoyne has recommended to the faithful that they do penance by looking at Meghan's bloody awful show. He said bloody awful. He says, do penance and drink in the mediocrity. He was very funny. He was very truthful. And I'll tell you, you rarely know that Meghan has scraped the bottom of the barrel when she has a Catholic priest, the Empress of Goop, and people in Hollywood all over the place mocking her roundly. She has become a figure of fun. Now, the irony is that she is so ridiculous that if she would just embrace her ridiculousness and just become an honest phony instead of being a phony, she might actually end up being liked. But I don't think she's capable of doing that. That requires character. That requires integrity. That requires insight. I don't think she can do it. But Father Kilcoyne also was deliciously funny about Meghan and the beekeeping, because he was mortified by the riveting conversation she had with the beekeeper, which of course was something of a joke, because it was obvious that Meghan knew nothing about bees. She didn't even know the life cycle of a bee. So, yeah, I did see it, and I'd recommend anybody who wants a laugh. It's short, sweet, and to the point. They see it. And also the ironies to people who think that it's cruel of a priest and inappropriate of a priest to make fun of a public figure like this. He's actually doing Meghan a failure. Sorry. He's doing Meghan a favour. Not a failure, a favour. Because he is making people look at her show and giving them an incentive to look at her show, which will boost the figures. That's right. So when the figures are boosted, she benefits as well. So he's actually not being unkind. He's simply being truthful. Kids are relevant says, in lieu of editing my very long post, it has come to my attention that Blake Lively did receive a right to sue notice. Here's the interesting part. She received it in 1 day. 1 day. Unheard of. The California Civil Rights Division, to my personal knowledge, has never and most likely would never allow a lawsuit within 1 day of a filing. It tells me in my limited but factual knowledge something smells, because more than 1 day is necessary to complete the very intricate investigative process. My goodness, I remain team victims. Well, I'm going to tell you what my Hollywood bongo drums have been beating out to me. And to those of you who might have been following what I'm saying on X, I want to be careful how I put this, because Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have had a senior ex-person from the CIA who has been going around exerting pressure quite extraordinarily. So, but I have an in, let's put it that way, to a super duper A-lister in Hollywood. And I also have other connections in Hollywood. And they are absolutely appalled at, well, one of them said it's like Fatty Arbuckle all over again. I don't know if you know who Fatty Arbuckle is. He was a comedian who was involved in something unsavory on a yacht that resulted in the demise of someone, his career was destroyed. And the flagrant and rampant display of power and of misuse of power that has been displayed is evidently deeply disturbing and discomforting to many people in Hollywood, and it's not appreciated at all. I'm told that Blake Lively's career is absolutely finished, and that Ryan Reynolds's, which a few weeks ago they thought might have been okay, is most likely going to tank along with hers. That their entitlement, even the way they have drafted their pleadings, that's the English way of putting it. I don't think it's the American way, but I'm trying to make the point just with that. The way their pleadings have been drafted to the court have been so arrogant, overbearing, and entitled that it has got people's backs up generally. It's too much a David and Goliath situation, with the Philistines thinking that they can ride roughshod over the little Israelites, to use the biblical analogy. She has also done things that are falling super duper foul of the mood of the moment. And I've never seen a Blake Lively or a Ryan Reynolds movie, so I have to rely upon what I'm being told. But I gather that they both have bizarre senses of humor, but that his sense of humor, which used to be tolerated and at one point appreciated, has worn very thin. And the latest thing that is causing huge disquiet in Hollywood is the inclusion of their 7-year-old daughter in a scene in the movie Deadpool, where she is using filthy, foul, carnally descriptive language that is banned on YouTube. So I can't repeat what she says in the movie on YouTube. It's that awful. And this is something that they thought was not only appropriate, but that was so desirable as to be funny, that they included it in a movie. People are beginning to see that this is a couple that has seriously impaired judgment and seriously impaired ways of functioning that are causing huge disquiet. I don't want to be any more blunt than that. But now, as for any favours she might have received in the filing of the civil rights suit or complaint, whatever it's called, the complaint that gave rise to This was evidently done to prevent Justin Baldoni from ever defending himself against her, and even if he then emerged victorious, she would not suffer any consequences for her accusations, which appear to be trumped up. Having made the complaint in California, she then takes and files the suit in New York in federal court. Well, federal court always trumps state court, but also if she expected that she was going to be, and her lawyers were so clever that they were going to file in something in in California that would prevent him from ever being allowed to not only defend himself, but make a claim against her. It's not working out like that at all. And there is huge disquiet, I am told, in certain legal circles about the way this whole matter has been going. And there is also talk, and this is, it could be just idle chatter, that there is a connection from Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds via Emanuel, whose brother, Emanuel, was a Democratic ambassador in Japan, if I remember correctly. And the Emanuels are on intimate terms with Gavin Newsom. And Gavin Newsom has already shown us that he has no compunction about interfering in the legal process, because he's done it for Meghan and Harry on more than one occasion. He has intervened on their behalf when their company, Archewell, had problems, and he did it to allow them to do a walkabout on the ashes of people's properties. So there seems to be a precedent for favors being called in. And is this going to go down well? Well, my understanding is Brian Friedman is going to make sure it doesn't. And people on the internet are evidently up in arms about a lot of this as well, including the fact that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have used their 7-year-old daughter in this, what I would regard as wildly inappropriate way. And I am no prude where language is concerned. I mean, Princess Anne isn't the only person who can swear like a sailor. Take it from me. I know I can. And other friends of mine who are also of princely rank do the same thing. So we're not prissy, and I'm certainly no priss, especially where language is concerned. But to put filth in the mouth of a 7-year-old child is absolutely staggering, to put it mildly. I mean, I cannot say how appalled I was to discover that anybody could have thought that that was funny. But then I understand that Blake Lively has a really weird sense of humour, and I'm being polite, because she actually appeared on television and made a joke about the fact that she was named after her grandmother's brother who had been murdered. And according to the Daily Mail, he wasn't murdered. I couldn't believe when I heard that. I mean, I have a grandfather, a brother-in-law, a first cousin, and a second cousin, all of whom were dispatched prematurely. I can tell you, it is not a laughing matter. And in my opinion, somebody has to really have a fairly sick sense of humor to be joking about something like that. But then it makes absolute sense to me that she would do that, because this is a woman who has allowed her husband to defile their daughter's mouth using the filthiest possible language in a film. So that's a pretty permanent record. Well, let us see the way this whole thing pans out, because I know from my bongo drums that, you know, they're shaping up to be Fatty Arbuckle. And we know what happened to his career. So let's leave it at that. On that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Okay, thank you so much. Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.